so much for joining. I want to welcome Tim Boeckmann, CEO and co-founder of Mailchain, right beside me here. Steffen Kux, CEO of DM3 Protocol, and Makoto Inoue, L2 dev with Ethereum Name Service, or ENS, that everyone knows of today. So, we're not scared of Web3 panels. We're here to talk about how we can communicate more effectively, how to communicate our brand message and communicate what it is that we do to the World Wide Web. So my first question, and what we're going to talk about today, is all about Web3 messaging. So what Web3 identity means to our customer base and what it is meaning for like our data privacy, how it's stored, how can we really provide and how can we really trust the data that is provided from our company, from our team, what is open source and ecosystems built on the technology that we all love as well. My first question is for Steffen. What are the problems and challenges of today's communication tools, and how can Web3 really benefit?
Yeah, when we look into the messaging and communication world today, we see several tools we are using. I think every one of us is using email. What is the problem with email? It's kind of decentralized, yes, but when we look into the encryption, it's almost every day used unencrypted. So I tried it for several years to have encrypted mails, send my public key around. I never got an encrypted message back. And when we look into the messaging world, then we see these big messengers in the Web2 world. So these are siloed systems, closed systems. They are controlled by big companies, and there's no interoperability between these services possible. And also the users are only controlled by these companies. So if I have an account on one of these messenger platforms, so it is controlled by the company which is providing the service. And when we look into the Web3 world, we have a lot of technology we can use to make communication, messaging more self-sovereign, so that the user can control their tools by themselves. Now we have keys, we can do a good encryption, we have technology to provide information which is used for the communication. And with Web3 technology, we can solve also problems like spam protection. We have a lot of problems there also in the messaging world today.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned straight away, you talk about email accounts, and that's definitely something that we're going to talk a lot about today. Like, who here in the audience has more than one email? Every single person? Yes. So this is why it's very important, because it goes to show a lot of the Web2 tools do not work in the Web3 space. They're not compatible. Therefore, you need to have multiple, for different reasons, that you need to have the same thing multiplied, and for what reason you're kind of wasting your own time in a way. So how can we make our lives easier, and how can we make our customer base easier? So I want to introduce Tim for this reason as well, where you can talk about what you do at Mailchain.
Absolutely, thanks Irish. So hi everyone, I'm Tim from Mailchain, one of the co-founders. I've been working in the communication space in Web3 since the beginning of 2019 really, and putting communication under the microscope, we've sort of seen an evolution of online identity. And when you look at how we use identity in Web3, it's got some very different primitives. And the reason why we set out to build Mailchain was to enable blockchain identities to communicate. And it shouldn't matter which protocol you come from or what kind of identity you're using. We either support or intend to support that. But like looking at the Web3 user, they have multiple identities they use for different things. And if you, in Web2 or traditional internet, you use your email for so many things, it's become your default identity, and it will cover your banking. You may have like had historic ones that you've had to kind of leave behind because they're so spammy, or sort of, there are even some companies where they've said that they won't employ people who apply with a Yahoo address because it's so old. And just odd things like that. So people tend to move with their identity, and we're looking at a different primitive for Web3. So communication in context is something that we need to be better at, and then also the verified communication. So many people can spoof being you, but we've got the technology to verify where the communication is coming from and where it's going to. So it's really important that we build that into any new technology that's coming out today.
Yeah, identities are soul bread and butter in the Web3 space, and what better person to start talking about our identity is yourself, Makoto, because you are the L2 developer for ENS domains that many of us hold today because of when everyone heard about that big airdrop that happened, everyone rushed into the space. Who here has an ENS identity or an ENS name? And do you actively use it and promote it? Yeah, so do I. And I find this like a fascinating conversation that we have the main developer here today as well. So I have a great question for you, given that each person does have either the same identity or multiple identities, as we have even with the Web2 world. I personally would find it very difficult to gather, let's say, analytics, generate that true understanding of who our audience is, and from a business perspective. So how can we really protect our user base without sacrificing security or user experience?
Yeah, thank you for asking. My name is Makoto, and I'm one of the developers at Ethereum Name Service. And I get lots of privacy-related questions as an ENS, that people fear that as soon as you have ENS name, your privacy is exposed. And my answer is actually it's not you, it's already exposed. That you don't have to put your real name as your ENS name. It's just like a human readable nickname to your Ethereum address. And it's actually being exposed is your on-chain history. So that all the things if you use the same Ethereum address doing like a DeFi and buy an NFT altogether, all these information are already possible to analyze. And actually, my background is actually a database engineer, so I love analyzing stuff. And there's lots of amazing analytics tools actually on such as Geo Analytics, which allows you to write SQL to stitch it up. So I often not stalking, but I'm just trying to catch what other people the people who have ENS names, what other activity they do use. So I think I've created a couple dashboard when the address which register username, how long has the address been used? Is it within 1 week, 1 month, 6 months? That kind of information was actually impossible to do in Web2 world, but you can actually get all that stuff. So in terms of findability, it's actually great. But again, if you think about privacy, yeah, that where gives choice to the users. Just like people have different email addresses. How many people have more than one Ethereum address? Yeah, so more than half people actually have it. So I usually have my ENS name is matoku.is, and all my stupid NFT or some city airdrop drop hunting, I do that publicly, and I don't really care. And also if I go to events, there's nowadays a badge called this is called NFT pull-up badge, where if you kind of tap on the phone, it gives the NFT to say, oh, you met Steffen, and that kind of stuff. It's all out there, and it's great. But yeah, I might not attach this to my basically network all the stuff. So it comes down to, and it's actually, even when you separate addresses, it's actually easy to trace that. First thing is when you buy ENS name, you have to pay with ETH. Where do you get the ETH? You have to send from somewhere. So it's quite difficult to completely separate. But again, it's not necessarily name service problem, but it's already the inherent problem of entire blockchain. So in our stance is yes, privacy is a difficult problem, but there are lots of solutions coming up, and in our mission is just to make it easier to integrate with these services.
Yeah, you definitely have succeeded with that to make everyone's life in the Web3 space a lot easier. And I think like there's definitely more innovations that are badly needed to better form communication, because there's a lot of bad communication tools out there in the Web2 and Web3 space. But I think we can definitely improve on what's already there. And I think that's what yous all do, right? That you that you would look at like templates and don't necessarily scratch from brand new, but rely on code that is already there, rely on other businesses that is open source to learn from that and then move on and progress. So the question is, are we ready for that kind of world right now? Like, it's totally new to, like, as you said, stock, and then you changed the word, I noticed, because we don't want to admit that we are stalking, but we are if it's completely transparent, and that's the type of world that we want. But that's the question, is that the world that we want? I feel like a lot of people don't really understand if it is the world that they want. So I'll leave this to use to answer that question.
So when it comes to my ENS name, as Makoto said, I have my personal name, which I am sharing for all people to know here that this is my information about myself, about my work. But if I, for instance, connect my communication to a name, I don't need to use the same name. I can have different names. So the thing which is nice on these identities which are Web3 based on blockchain is these are central registries on a decentralized system. So I can share information which I cannot share in a centralized system in the same way, because then someone would own this information. Now, for instance, if I share my communication profile in my ENS name, it's permissionless that everyone can read it. So it doesn't mean that my communication must be not private. The communication needs to be private. And it needs to be encrypted, and we need privacy-preserving mechanisms. But to have the ability to encrypt and to have private communication, I need to share something, like my public keys for encryption and so on. And for this, I need a central registry or central place where I can publish this information. And Web3 technology gives us this public space where I have central information which is permissionless, accessible for everyone.
I think that's definitely the starting point of what we see with Web3, but we also need to develop the tools to help people protect their privacy. And not everybody wants all of their stuff available. They don't want to be a contact point that you can just go and find that. We definitely need to do a better job of creating ways people can filter out getting unsolicited communication, unconsented communication. And there's a bunch of regulations that are sort of slowly making their way into all technology that we use, whether it's Web 2, Web 3. And if we're not getting ahead of that, then people are just going to have a horrible time adopting new tools with more noise. Because you own this, then you get a bunch of communications. And it's very targeted, but there's nothing to stop that communication coming through.
Yeah, I think so. Messaging or communication is not a space where we can a revolution right now. We cannot say, okay, let's do all by the side and let's do things completely new. Because there are good working communication tools already. People are satisfied, so they are convenient, and this is actually a thing which people trade most. They would need convenient tools. And the awareness that we need privacy and security is sometimes not in the first place. So that's why if we introduce technologies which provide security, provide privacy, so there's no space for the revolution to do it completely and remove everything else. We have to increase the way that we have more security and more privacy.
I actually have a random question we didn't prep, so I might put you on the spot, but may I ask? So one thing is, like, every event, what we do is we usually have a chat, and then when we do, and also this one, like, you can swap public information and stuff. But what we always do is we exchange like Telegram information, and we do selfie, all the stuff. And in ENS, we primarily store for Ethereum addresses, but you can put public profile. People do put like Twitter or other stuff, because Twitter is relatively public, but they never put Telegram, because even though Telegram is not really private, but you don't want to expose to the public because the people get spam and the stuff. And I'm wondering why there's no, like, we were in the decentralized conference and we still like exchange the Telegram. I wonder like, is there anything you guys can build, or is it something inherently difficult to integrate? So like, I don't have to, scan the QR code, but like, a lot easier way using decentralized tool to put some kind of public-private communication. Like, why they're not using one of your tools at the event?
So this is a good question. So this is what we are working on in different ways. But in the future, I only want to share my ENS name, and that's enough. And you can message me and send an email to me because you know my ENS name. So when I look at my smartphone, I have at least 20 different communication apps on it. And when I count all these messaging windows inside other applications, so this in-app messaging, maybe I'm using 20 or even more messaging solutions. And I have different identities, sometimes no notifications. So my vision of the future is I have my communication bundled, for instance, to my ENS name. And then everything else I can link to this so that I have full control over my messages and full control how I want to communicate with others.
I think for me it's a little different. There's a lot of people I've just met. I don't want them to have my ENS address, my ENS name, to profile me, to know which airdrops I've been out collecting. For Telegram, that's fine because I can just turn them off and it goes to the bottom of the list and the noisiest things come to the top. I'm not quite ready for that step in the relationship. So as I get to know people, we've always focused on high quality communication use cases when we go and integrate projects. And the sort of DAOs, the governance, all of the use cases that we've really done a good job of solving, and the messages that I have in my inbox, those are from the people that I value those relationships a lot. If it's just Telegram, it's quite good for group chat, but the individuals, they tend to sink down the bottom of the list, and there's a few that I do care about.
Yeah, you mentioned two things there that really struck a chord with me. One was filtering out for those to make sure that not everything, it will be that no one is going to be excluded. Like, accessibility is huge and hugely underestimated in the Web3 space because it's such a new and upcoming area. And I know you have a huge passion for this. You mentioned also DAOs, and I do want to get into that, but UX design really strikes a chord with me. So I have a couple of questions, but I'm just going to ask one. In terms of UX design, a lot of it can be poor because it's either you hear fail fast. Do you think that is the correct way to create apps right now, to get it in the Web3 space I'm talking about, to get it out there that it's working? There's nothing wrong with it, but it's poor UX. Are you proud, let's say, of that app then if it's out in the Web3 space? Do you think it's more important to have good UX or to have a working app?
In many ways, you've got to do both when you've got privacy and any kind of private key activity going on. So I think the base layer has to be solid. In terms of the UX, when we first started experimenting in this space, I built the front end and it was terrible because I'm not a good developer and I don't write any code for Mailchain. But that was good enough to give people a flavor of where we were going, and it got us a lot of early adopters, quite a few open source contributions. So that's helpful. But I think when you want to actually start getting users of all different stages, because we're all quite technical, we know how to install apps and we get a feel for them very quickly. But a lot of people, a new app to them is quite a daunting thing. So we spend a lot of time now focused on UX and making sure that when you come to Mailchain, it looks like webmail because everybody knows how to use that. We don't want any friction on that point.
Yeah, I think for it to be relatable, that it doesn't look completely new, that it looks something similar that you've used before. Even if you look at social media, if you look at Reddit, I remember the first years of using the computer when I must have been maybe maybe 8 years old when I first got a game in front of me in primary school, and I thought this was amazing, and somehow I knew how to complete the game after never using a computer before.
Wow.
But using forums, I remember, was really popular. It was the only thing that was like your Web 1, not even Web 2. So Web 1 was just using forums, and that was your Google, that was your how you communicate, how you found the answer to what is the world, why do we exist, you know? You couldn't Google. So in terms of UX, I find that like, yeah, new tools that are being developed are always based on previous ones, and I feel like they are the most successful tools. But when we compare with ENS I feel is something that we've never seen before. So I think ENS is a striking concept that a lot of people in the Web3 space really woke up to and went, okay, yeah, I agree that I have a different identity, but to actually try and get people to use ENS, in your opinion, do you think like it moves very fast in the Web3 space? Or like, I know now there's a lot of other domains out there and a lot of other ones that you can use, but I don't think that they do compare to ENS.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually you thought it's kind of a striking concept, because ENS, actually the name is very similar to DNS, which is a domain name service like google.com and the stuff. And I think DNS is one of the earliest and longest running web services. I think it started in 1984, before like it was public commercially opened. And when our founder Nick Johnson, I think he used to be Google engineer, and when he got into like a Web3, first thing he saw, oh, what's missing? Oh yeah, you need something like DNS in ENS. So for us, it was kind of natural thought, like what's missing in Web. First thing you need in Web3 is naming. Otherwise, you can't do anything. Like you can't build like all the things building. You need an identity. Otherwise, all these communication tools cannot use it. So for us, it was kind of quite obvious choice. But like it's still, people find it refreshing that like it. But because people kind of treat that like crypto is difficult, is a norm. So people treat that as a just normal thing. So I'm surprised that people think that's a novel idea, but like I've been doing for 5 years, so for me it's just a no.
He's sick of it already.
But did the identity come afterwards? Like it's so strong an identity, but it's done off as a name service.
Yeah, so I think one of the stuff is, for example, in DNS, you only do so-called forward lookup, that you type google.com and it returns the IP address. We have the primary purpose is doing that, but we have something called reverse lookup. We also call primary name, that whenever you log into many like, OpenSea or Uniswap, first thing you do is connect with wallet, which is almost equivalent with login. And what it does, when it does it, all the app knows which address you connected as. Then we have a simple system to map address to name. That was kind of just according to Nick Johnson, who made it, he just throw in just because you could. But that actually took it off as a Web3 identity, because that's what people start seeing when you log in. Or if you go to Etherscan, or like if you go to any DAO tools, like voting result, you either see in like hexadecimal or you see ENS. So that was actually not much thought. I think according to him, he just put it in. But that now it became one of the most critical feature of ENS. Right? Yeah. So that, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question for all of you as well. I don't know how much more time that we have, but I think the most important question of the night for me would be, have you got any fears entering this world when we're constantly trying to create and outdo previous communication tools to make it better? Like, is there a sense of fear in that? Like, is there a danger in that, trying to make our lives easier, but also like the team's life hell?
Yeah, again, I'm doing this for almost 5 years, so it just became norm. So I don't have only fear I have is one unique aspect of Web3 communication, all the stuff is somehow it ties into your asset, and some people may have like, so if you do security wrong, you might lose some of the asset. If you don't have lots, that's fine, but if you have some, then yeah, that's the only bit which, like, your email get occasionally compromised, and it's annoying that you have to reset all the password. That's it. But in case of Web3, if you have an NFT and stuff, that gets stolen. If you have some cryptoasset, that gets stolen. That's, I think, completely new idea. So to be honest, like my wife still hasn't got the
Really?
wallet, because her password management isn't good enough in my style. Like I use a password manager, all the stuff, but she doesn't, so I don't feel comfortable that she's ready yet. Yeah, so maybe, not ready yet. I guess that's a short answer.
And it's true. I believe like most of the world isn't ready yet. We're there to educate, and that's why we're here to speak and to educate other people in the room as well as ourselves, to try and make sure that that fear doesn't have to happen. It's just a fear that we're prepared, you know.
So yeah, I'm not afraid about these things, but we have really to think about how people are using these things. So I'm familiar with using my keys to sign things. That's common for me now. I do it for a lot of years. So if I talk with my wife or my kids, they are not familiar with this. So, and when we think about using Web3 technology, it's not, we should not use the technology because we have the technology. That's always a really bad decision. I have a nice technology, what can I do with this technology? This should not be our thinking. The thing should be, we have a problem to solve, and if we use this technology, can we solve it better? So that means, so you asked the question about usability or user experience. Now, we had today also a nice panel only talking about this. So it's really important in the Web3 space that we have a good user experience so that people can use it. Now, that people are not afraid to use the keys. And sometimes we should not do compromises in security, but compromises in how to use it. Sometimes it's better to give people an access to something where they are using a Web 2-like approach. In the background, we help them to use Web3 technology, or maybe Web3 technology is not visible at all in the application, but is securing stuff behind the scenes. So I think this is really important when we build these applications, that we look, how can we provide a use for or a benefit for our users, but not to bring this technology because we can.
That's a good point. I think looking at as more users come, you've kind of got this problem that we created in Web 2, where people collect a lot of data, but that ends up in a small handful of people's hands. And they authorize that to be accessed by some other people for some other reasons. And that's kind of seen as not a great thing to do. But when everything is so transparent and so open, we give everybody access to be able to see all of those things. And if we go down that path and we don't start to put the safeguards in place, then we've actually created a much bigger problem than one we were probably trying to solve in the first place. And so transparency is really good for the individual who's the subject of any transaction or the life cycle around that. But transparency for a bunch of random people out there who may be thinking how they can leverage that in some way, and they have no right to, that's something that we've got to do a better job at. And those are probably the things that I'd like to see solved more, and I'd definitely like to contribute to solving that.
Absolutely. So if anyone has a GitHub, send us the link. I want to just say as well, like, with censorship, because we didn't really get to talk about that, and it is very important to protect users and to protect what we all believe in. But we have talked a little bit about being naive to the fact of what we really want in the Web3 space. We say decentralization is great, and that's the world, exactly the world that we want to go into. And we talked a little bit about it, and I know even you, Tim, you did say that we are a bit naive, right? That we don't necessarily need total decentralization, but the Web3 space can definitely do more of it.
Yeah, I think there are people that don't want to manage their own keys, they don't want to have the responsibility of that, and they do trust other people to do it. Like, you trust your electrician to fix your electrics. I wouldn't touch that. It's probably not the best analogy. I trust people to look after my kids. They're very well qualified at that. I don't want to take on everything on my own shoulders because that's a lot to bear.
Yeah, have you got anything else left to add with ENS DAO? I know that you are doing amazing things as well in the decentralized autonomous world. Do you have any like future plans or anything that you'd like to share with the audience?
In DAO itself, DAO has been running for, like, the ENS itself started back in 2017, and we didn't have a DAO nor a token, and one of the stuff is like ENS is one of the few protocol which has a kind of sustainable revenue by the registration fee, and around 2021, I think that's when, like, JPEG Summit happened. We start getting more revenue than our kind of dev resource need. So we saw like we need a ways to determine what kind of public goods we should be contribute back, because ENS, again, another unique thing is we are one of the few projects which had like no investors, purely because back in 2018, Ethereum Foundation gave $1 million grants to ENS to spawn us on its own organization. So we owe to the EF trusting us, then just giving us grants. So we are always in the hand for, like, how we provide revenue to the kind of enhancing public goods and the other Web3 communities in general. And we do have a working group, and we have ways to just decide how to distribute that kind of stuff. So like it's not like anything new, but we've been doing that, but not many people know. So if anyone's interested in, like, joining DAO, that's one way to, I guess, join. And we are having the first conference called Friends Day. So ENS, like, like all the Web3 companies have a kind, BTS have an army.
Web3 friends.
Yeah, so BTS Army, Chainlink Marine. Yes, Synthetic Spartan, we call it Friends. And so our community member friends, and we trying to have a community events in Istanbul. There's an event called Dev Connect, and we're trying to have events. So if you guys are thinking about going there, maybe
you're all invited.
Yeah, a great way to join. Yeah.
Istanbul.
Yes.
Istanbul, here we come. Yeah. Okay, I'm loving it. I'm gonna see you. Yeah, no, thank you so much. So for anyone, just to repeat, if you haven't heard of the companies Mailchain, we have ENS and we have DM3 protocols. Make sure to look up all them and check them out if you haven't heard already. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists and everyone for listening. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.